Hello and welcome, it's Chris from Christopher Holt Training. Welcome to this tutorial where we're going to talk about core strength and stability and two of my core skills. The two core skills is breathing and bracing. First of all, we're going to go through some of the benefits and why you should be doing them, and then we're going to go through some practical bits where you can start to practice it. The two core skills we're talking about, again, are breathing and bracing. So why are they important? Well, breathing is important for exercise because it creates power. It creates power through the drive of the abdomen contracting and pushing the oxygen out of the lungs. It also manages the stress response. Now, exercise is a stress to the body, and your body reacts in a certain way. Now, if we can manage our breathing, what we are then able to do is relax that stress response and get more from the exercise. Because what's happening when we get stressed, muscles contract, joints tighten up, and everything sort of closes in on itself. If we can manage our breathing, what we can then do is start to open out and express and get more from the movements and the exercises that we're doing when it comes to the core strength and stability. When it comes to bracing, we've then got to put the two together and brace and breathe, which again we'll sort of practically talk about in a second. But what that's doing is, number one, that's stabilizing the spine so you don't hurt yourself. Number two, it's distributing the load around the torso. Number three, it's making the movement or the posture much more efficient. So everything that you are able to do, if you can brace and breathe, you're going to get much more out of the exercise. You're going to be able to do the exercise for longer. So if you just come to a gym, or if you just watch a social media channel and you're just doing the exercises that you're following, then you're doing the exercise, but you're not getting the most from it. And that's what we want to be able to do, is get the most from exercise so we can get more out of the time that we're spending doing it. So just to quickly summarize, number one, it manages the stress response. It creates power through driving through the movement, using that breathing. It stabilizes the spine, or bracing stabilizes the spine, reduces load on the spine by distributing it around the torso, and it makes any movement much more efficient. So what we'll do now is we'll get stuck in and try out some practical things that you can start doing that you can apply to exercise. The first thing we're going to do is the actual breathing technique, and then we're going to put it together in some movements and some exercises. So what we're going to do is we're just going to start down, lead on our back, feet flat on the floor and knees bent. So we've got relaxed lower body and head on the floor, shoulders back, relaxed lower body. Then we're going to put a fist on our abdomen, breathe in, stomach's going to go up, breathe out, stomach's going to go down. So that's the breathing technique. It's known as 90-90 breathing, but with 90-90 breathing you would normally have your feet up on something, so you're 90-90, but essentially it's the same type of thing. We're breathing from the abdomen. That is what initiates and manages that stress response. So things don't close up, we don't get too tight, we forget to breathe, and then we're just holding on for dear life. What we need to be able to do is, when we do exercise, is use that breathing technique. So if I just grab a kettlebell from back here and I lift it from the floor, I can keep everything tight. If it's too heavy, everything goes tight, shoulders go tight, I can feel my head starting to fill with blood, and the movement is a lot shorter. If then I am able to breathe into that, I can then start to create a little bit more power. Now, this comes along with the next principle that we're going to talk about, so I'll cover this again, but essentially we come down and we start filling our lungs, but breathing from the abdomen. I then come down. As I breathe out, what I'm looking to do is squeeze my abdominals together, and that pushes the air out, which is going to create that drive and create that power. So we come down into position. Like so. You may see in martial arts when they make their noises as they go through their punches. Again, that's to contract the abdominals. The purpose of it is to contract the abdominals so they then start to push air out of the lungs and use their abdominals and use their diaphragm to control stress responses, to control movement, and to control muscle contraction as well. So when we are talking about bringing bracing into that, what we've then got to learn is to not only breathe from the abdominals, but to hold them relatively tight, but we can still breathe behind that. It's known as breathing behind the shield being the abdominal wall, and we are learning to breathe behind it. So when you're doing a plank, when you're doing a chop, or when you're doing a lift, whatever it might be, it's getting this breathing and this bracing, because these are the two fundamentals of the core skills. They are the foundation of the foundation. The core skills is the foundation, and these two are the foundation to the core skills. So what we want to be doing is using bracing. Now bracing is where I contract my abdominals. So if I'm loose, I can push my fingers into my abdominals here and it's all a bit floppy. But when I tense, I can't get in. It's solid. So I go floppy and then I tense and it pushes out and I can't push in any longer. That's known as bracing. So when we go into exercise, we could do that in a plank. So we come down into the plank position and we brace the abdominals. We could do it with a kneeling exercise. We brace the abdominals, we lift, we hold the body solid in position, and we can pass a weight round without being pulled around by the weight. So that's what bracing is, and what we need to do now is bring the two together. So what we need to be able to do now is breathe behind that wall. So now these are static exercises which are easier to get the breathing and the bracing correct. And then finally we're going to use the cable at the end and bring it into a dynamic movement. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down onto knees. If you've got a kettlebell, you can brace and then all the way. Whenever I'm breathing out, I'm doing it as I change hands. So that creates a rhythm, and then what I'm able to do is just expand, contract, expand, contract. If you do it in a plank, again, it's getting that rhythm. So we go into this position, pull tight through the abdominals, and then and what you should be able to feel in either of those two exercises is a very mild expansion and contraction of the abdominal wall. It won't be the same as when you're laid out on your back, because that's just getting the general technique and understanding of breathing from the abdominals. So it won't be the same because it's going to be much less because the abdominals are braced. So when we're doing it, that's two very simple static postures to be in to start understanding it. What we then do is move on to a more dynamic type of movement. So let's use a chop, for example. So I've got a nice wide stance, the weight is in my hands, and I'm going to pull down to my knee and go back up. Now if this is a heavier weight, so if I just double the weight, it's now a bit more for me to try and pull down. So I've now got to use that brace because I naturally have to pull in tight to be able to hold myself to pull it down. So what I'm going to do is come into position, get my breathing, get relaxed, and then as I push the air out, I contract my abdominals, and up. Do the same again. and up. And up. So those are 3 very simple ways just to get you started an understanding of breathing and bracing during exercise. And as I mentioned, there are a few benefits to it. Manages the stress response, takes load away from the spine, stabilizes the spine, and makes that movement much more efficient. So you're able to lift more with less effort. And that is the 2 fundamentals of my core skills. Now again, if you do any of my online training, any of my face-to-face training, if you come and work with me in the gym, these are the types of things you learn. So it's not just coming in, getting a pounding from exercise and then leaving. It's a little bit more nuanced than that, and it's very much about getting exercise correct, doing it correctly so you don't hurt yourself during exercise. To summarize everything that we've talked about so far, so we have core strength and we have core skills. Now the core skills are the foundation to core strength and stability. And the 2 core skills that we've talked about is breathing and bracing. So they are the foundation to the foundation. Core skills are the foundation, breathing and bracing is the foundation to that foundation. The benefits that we get, so why are we doing it? Number 1, it helps balance the stress response with the relaxation response. Exercise is a stress to the body, we want to manage that. Breathing helps us do that. Bracing, secondly, stabilizes the spine, manages the load on the spine or reduces load on the spine, and it optimizes or makes movement more efficient. So you're able to do more with less effort. How we do that, we use the 90-90 breathing technique that I showed you. We mastered that breathing technique. Then we add a layer on top and we start to brace around it. And then we use that bracing to create power through the drive, and then we're able to get that much more from the exercise. So those are the techniques, and those are the benefits. Again, use those techniques that I talked about when you next go and do an exercise session. Now, if you scroll down, you'll see that I have ebooks, you'll see that I have online programs. So if you want to get involved in those, you will learn more of this stuff. So it's not just the standard, oh, there's a workout, go and follow it. You learn the core skills, you learn about fundamental movements, you learn how to use your body and how to exercise correctly. So you start to reduce risk of injury and optimize your fitness, optimize your core strength and stability. So it's not just that 1-minute clip where you copy a bunch of exercises, you get a sweat on, and then you leave. It's a little bit more than that. So if you want to exercise correctly, if you want to build core strength and stability, then those are going to be the programs for you. So many thanks for watching. My name is Chris from Christopher Holt Training. I will speak to you in the next tutorial.